hello and a very warm welcome to a very special show on brand equity. Today I'm going to be discussing a very unique topic with none other than the industry veterans. I am absolutely delighted to have four very distinguished gentlemen joining me today to discuss Mouli Venkateshan's latest book, his second book, and it's called Get Better at Getting Better. We definitely need a class in this particular subject. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you, Mouli, for writing yet another book after Catalyst. I wonder how you do it with a full-time job and, of course, a passion like golf, but many congratulations.
Thank you.
And maybe you can unveil the secret in how you multitask in your life. And, of course, joining me and him to discuss how to get better at getting better is none other than Vivek Gambhir, Deepak Iyer, and Bharat Puri. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Truly a pleasure. So I did, glimpse through your book and I did a quick read. Firstly, what was the trigger, Mouli, to write a book saying "Get better at getting better"? Did it come from personal inspiration? Did it come from, your HR stint at Cadbury's, which I think you hold so close to your heart? What was the real trigger?
No, actually, the trigger started in the HR stint. To give you a story, I'm 20 odd years of sales, marketing, business management, but I did 3 years of that cross-functional stint of being HR head for Cadbury. So when I became the HR head for Cadbury, the first question I asked is, what is HR's contribution to make the business successful? So if I did marketing, I knew marketing contributes to make the business successful by branding and innovation. So how does HR make a business successful? And I spent time answering that question. I finally said, HR makes a business successful by making employees in the company successful. If more employees in the company become successful, the company will automatically succeed. So I defined the role of HR as making people successful. But then the million-dollar question came, how do people become successful? What makes somebody successful and how do some people not become successful? And that question, I think, has taken me 10 years to answer. Because while I defined the role that time, I think it took a lot of observation, a lot of insights, and so on and so forth. And I said, did this phase of observation, just observing successful people and less successful people and saying, what's the key difference? Is there one difference? Is there one difference? I think the big ticket piece that came out was very clearly that successful people are simply better at improving themselves continuously at a faster pace. So you meet a successful person after 2 years and you say, wow, this person has changed. You meet a less successful person after 2 years and you say this person is roughly the same.
I'm going to stop you there because you're the author. So I'm going to take this observation and throw it around with the other three very successful gentlemen as well. If they can actually meet a person and tell if they are actually getting better at being better, or is it that easy, is my question.
It becomes instinctive over time. It does become, I won't say it's easy, but when you've been around the block for a large number of years, one of the key skills is spotting fellows who are getting better or who will get better. Because all of us will see this situation where you have fellows who will come to you and say, I've been in this job X years, now when do I get the next job? And it becomes even more complicated when he says, I've been in this job X years and I've got good results. And therefore, how do I get the next job? But a lot of times you have to tell the guy, what you're doing is good enough for this job, but if you have to actually do the next job, you have to actually scale up. And he look at you very surprised and say, what does that mean? And then there are those guys, and I used to have an old boss who put it very well. You're paid to do your job, but if you want to succeed, do a little bit of my job. Those are the guys who are doing a part of your job. Those are the guys who are constantly getting better because they're putting themselves in your shoes and saying, listen, how can I now almost start doing the next job? Those are the guys who really move up faster.
Sure. Let me ask you another question. If you look at your peers, right, and not your subordinates, would you say that it is easy to spot somebody who's working on themselves vis-a-vis a person who's just going with the flow?
I think there are a bunch of different nuances to this, right? When people think about getting better, you can either get better by improving certain habits. And that's very difficult to actually, make out. If a person's gotten more discipline, if a person's just working harder, you don't know those things. But as leaders, and particularly with our peers, you can actually make out quite easily whether a person's gotten better. And there are some shifts a person will make. There's a shift from an I to a we. There is a shift from a person actually talking about the organization. There is a shift in terms of empathy, curiosity. And typically what you find is that leaders who tend to be very insecure will talk only about themselves. But typically, when an individual realizes that the organization is bigger than the individual, the tone, the language, the body language, visual language certainly talks a lot about confidence. The other important part is humility. What you actually find is that people who are getting better are the first ones to admit what they don't know. And I've realized personally with myself also, is the longer time I spend in corporate India, the less I actually know.
Sure.
And the willingness to actually be vulnerable and get out of your comfort zone is something which comes out quite obviously when you talk to people.
Fair point. Fair point. So let me come to you, Mouli, and ask you about this one pertinent thing that you've actually talked about is the fact that, as we all know, that as we age, our learning ability decreases, and our learning curve is steepest when we are younger. But the bulk of our grand career decisions comes at a time when we are older. And so that whole, balancing that act is a tough one. Now, while one completely agrees with you that yes, we start learning much slower, and you say that you have to develop a model. Your entire premise is that you have to do GBM, right?
Yeah, get better model,
Get
GBM.
better model, right?
Yeah.
So they get better model, and you have to be deliberate and strategic about the fact that you need to get better. So while everybody will be on board with what you're saying, the point is in the execution, in the everyday rigmarole of deadlines, actually doing your job, for managing your home, your family, and how do you build this model, and what is this model?
Yeah. No, and I think it's a valid question to say I'm already packed 20 hours or
Yeah.
24 hours.
Now
How
I have
do
Netflix also.
Yeah, how do I find more time? So I think the biggest single barrier to getting better faster is the assumption that getting better is a byproduct of working hard. And I think we have to break that assumption. And an example I like to quote is, let's say the women's cricket is on rise today. So two young girls are preparing to be professional cricketers. Let's call them Gita and Babita. So Gita has a model of practicing where she bats for 5 hours each day. She just comes, bats for 5 hours, goes back home, comes next day, bats 5 hours in the nets. Babita has a model of practice where she bats for 4.5 hours in the nets, and the balance half an hour, she looks at video analysis of how she has batted for these 4.5 hours. And she asks a friend who was standing to say, what did I do well and what did I not do well? And the next day in her 4.5 hours, she incorporates those learnings and bats for 4.5 hours. And when I do sessions, I always ask people, who is going to be a more successful cricketer? Is it going to be Gita, who simply bats for 5 hours in nets? Or is it going to be Babita, who's 4.5 plus half an hour of getting better analysis? Almost everybody is clear Babita will become more successful. Then I ask the more difficult question. Who are you like at work? Are you Gita or are you Babita? Yeah. And almost everybody can realize that they are being Gitas in their life.
Were you a Gita or a Babita?
So you should ask me that question.
Wait, I'm coming to you. Patience.
I think, and as I've written in the book, some of these things I've learned over time. I didn't know it from day one.
Yeah.
But I think possibly I was a little lucky in two things. I think I had a natural Babita streak in me. So I have a natural mind of not just doing stuff, but figuring out why I am doing stuff. And two, I had some fantastic bosses, including this gentleman, who made me push the extra mile, So I think I got lucky in the early phase of my life, and then I figured this out. So I used to naturally focus on getting better, being distinct from hard work.
But do we have any Gitas?
I think we all start as Gitas. We all start as Gitas, and in fact, I think one of the great chapters in Mouli's book is about stagnating careers.
Right.
Where he talks about the time stage of a career, and then the GBN model kicks in. But what Mouli says in the first 10 years of one's career, it's all about hard work actually. It's about following instructions, about execution.
Sure.
But at some point, the rules of the game actually change.
Right.
We're no longer responsible for just doing hard work and a great attitude. You actually have to start providing the answers.
Sure.
And that's when people start struggling, which is not really knowing when that shift actually happens. And that's when I think, as Mouli articulately mentions, that careers start actually stagnating.
And, everybody wants to get better, right? I mean, if you meet anybody and ask them, would you want to get better? Yes, sir, everybody wants to get better. But some conditions enable it and some don't. And I always say the first starting enabling condition is looking back at yourself and being able to recognize that, hey, you do need to improve.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And it's easy to say, hard to do. I mean, there are lots of fellows who will come to you and say, I'm the finished article. I mean, there's no need for me to improve, and you have to gently, then start knocking them on the head and moving further. All of us have actually learned via our mistakes. And to my mind, we learn in three ways. We learn via our mistakes. We learn obviously via exposure, experience, meeting fellows. The third is you learn via adversity. And a lot of times, I still remember we were having this famous Cadbury incident, and our worldwide chairman was here, and he told me, Bharat, it's a privilege that you're going through this. And I'm looking at him, I've been beaten up by the press every day.
Okay, I must tell our viewers who are, tuning in that this is about the worm being found in the Cadbury chocolate. Deepak is cringing, but that's fine.
Please forget.
So, here's this Cadbury incident. We're all over the place, so on and so forth, etc. And he told me, this is a privilege. And I'm thinking, I mean, has this man been having something last night that I didn't know of? But I tell you, a few years later, he was right. Because what that microwave experience of like 9, 12 months taught you, I tell you, you've reapplied it so many times, so over and over again. Because adversity is when you really get tested against the fire. And hopefully, if you emerge better out of it, believe me, the next time it happens, like, Babita, you've seen the videographs, you've said, and like, the fascinating thing is, it keeps happening. I mean, in Cadbury, in different countries, we saw what happened to Nestle in India. It keeps happening, right?
Yeah.
The issue really is the attitude to learn, exposure and experience, and having the humility to ask fellows. I mean, he makes a very good point about coaches. All of us in life are fortunate if we get bosses who are coaches. That's really the best, because the biggest enabler of your career is a good boss.
So basically, your point here to be noted and underlined is that if you have a bad boss, resign.
Not resign. I'm saying if you have a bad boss, you then have to figure out, how do I now, A, still learn from the fellow, and B, of that bad boss, how do I still make the best of the situation? See, the only two people in life you can't choose are your relatives and your bosses, right? So, a lot of times, believe me, again, that's part of the adversity experience.
No, and just building on this one, I mean, I think on the bad boss one, because it's so interesting to people. I think there's three situations: good company, good boss;
Yeah.
good company, bad boss;
Yeah.
bad company, good boss; and bad company, bad boss.
Sure.
The two extremes are obvious: good company, good boss,
Perfect.
stay put; bad company, bad boss, exit. I think the two difficult situations are this one, where you have good company, bad boss. Now, do you last out a bad boss and actually use it as adversity to learn and actually have a long career in a good company?
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I would be in that camp. A tough one is this one, which is bad company, but a good boss. So you have a fantastic
true.
leader,
Yeah.
but possibly the company is not one of the greatest companies. Yeah?
Good point, yeah.
And I think a boss is so important to your learning that I would say at least play out the good boss tenure. Now, after the good boss is done, then you have to relook at your options.
Also, managing a bad boss is also a skill, right?
Yes.
Absolute skill.
Yes, that's
Very
also
important skill,
you
yeah.
need to manage that, and I think you need to. But I think the other big learning in this for me is, most times I keep advising my people that many people are interested in a career, but nobody is more interested than you.
Yeah.
If you choose to run your career hanging on to coattails, you'll only get thus far. At some stage, you need to back yourself. And that's the point Mouli makes in his book, saying, get better at getting better. So when are you going to push yourself into learning?
You say you can leverage people for your own gain, right? So you say you can leverage your colleagues, you can leverage your bosses, Now, while that sounds, extremely attractive in theory, how do you actually roll that ball into action?
Yeah. I mean, I think a great role model of this is sports persons. So I think sports people do two things well. One, they know that their success is equal to how much better they get. If you stand still, you're dead as a sports person. Yeah. So they know that they have to continuously improve themselves. And two, second thing they know that one of the most potent ways of improving themselves is to leverage coaches, videos, statistics, etc. Right? So they bring this attitude, and hence the starting point of leveraging others. In the corporate world, I think we tend to be so stuck in our work that we don't bring that attitude. So the starting point is bringing the attitude.
Explain to me how.
It's like, for example, today the transaction between an average employee and an average boss,
Okay.
I feel is transaction. Now there are two things. The boss is saying, I manage you for results. You get the job done for me.
Right.
The employee is saying, I'll deliver results for you, and once I deliver results for you, you got to get me an increment or a promotion. Now this is at the real crux of the transaction.
Sure.
Now, as an employee, you want to say, I want to get more out of my boss than just an increment and a promotion. I also want to learn phenomenally in the phase that I'm with the boss. Yeah. Now, the starting point is the onus of saying, I want to change the relationship with my boss, which is simply about having a conversation and saying, I will deliver the results, I will do what you ask me, but I want you to do one thing for me, which is use every opportunity as a coaching opportunity, right? Now, if you put that conversation, if you are able to have that conversation, you are possibly going to change your boss's mindset towards how they approach you.
And I think this is a very important point because we tend to be notoriously poor observers of our own reality.
Okay.
Our desire for very positive self-perceptions really clouds all our shortcomings. And our egos come in the way. And so without actually having an ecosystem or a support network, it's very difficult to actually improve just on your own.
Sure.
And for example, after reading Mouli's book, one of the things I was thinking of was that, I'm going to share my development plan with my team members and actually tell them that, here are the 3 or 4 developmental needs I have as a leader.
Wow.
And can they actually help me? Can they hold me accountable? Because the minute you state it in public, in a group, it actually forces a certain kind of a change process.
Also, somebody long back said that when a leader shows, I think it was one of you or Anand, I'm not sure, who said that when a leader shows vulnerability, right, he becomes a lot more powerful and people want to help out.
Absolutely. And vulnerability, and to my mind, when Mouli says leverage the relationship, I actually see it as a surrogate for building relationships. I think the leveraging the ecosystem is, look at these 2 companies, a Cadbury and a Pidilite.
Sure.
Every time you tell somebody you work for Cadbury or you work for Pidilite, the first thing they say is, oh, we love your advertising. How do you get it right most of the time? We've had the same relationship for 40 years. That's, to my mind, that is leveraging the ecosystem, but leveraging makes it sound like a financial thing. I would say it's building and nurturing a relationship.
No, absolutely. So I can actually give an example on how I managed some of these things in my life. So I have always had, firstly, I was blessed to have some great managers. And after they were not my manager any longer, I still maintained relationships with them because they were almost my mentors. So if I was in a dilemma saying these are the 2 options available in the company, which one would I choose? So and I have half a dozen of them. So I would go to all of them, and each of them would have a perspective on what this will teach you, what that will not, and what the other one will teach you. So then you are making a conscious call on saying that, okay, what am I actually taking this assignment for? And and that's when the penny drops to say, okay, I'm getting into this role because I can figure out. I'll give an example. I was going to Africa, so I asked my boss, saying, why should I go to Africa? It's 20 years behind India, so I'm going to deploy all my skills. He said, there are 3 good reasons why you have to go there. He said, 1, you will learn to operate in different cultures. It's not just one culture. 2, he said, you'll handle a portfolio of countries, which is a very different thing from managing one country. Sure. 3, you get out of the comfort zone of a very stable economy. You'll land up in a VUCA world where you don't know what's going to happen next. These 3 are super important. I am sending you there because I want from you your skills that you learned in India. What I have to offer to you are these 3. Do you think it makes sense? It was a great way to look at the assignment. And so that is what mentors are for. That's what an ecosystem is for. So I think, and if you don't leverage that, if I hadn't asked this question, right, I would never have possibly taken that assignment.
All of you have read Mouli's book. All of you all are very, very successful individuals. And I'm assuming that all of you all have used his philosophy of getting better and you're a bit deliberate about it. So what have you guys done in your personal careers? And please talk about even your failings, because, we are always celebrating successes. A lot of people who, let's say, look up to you as role models and want to aspire to be you someday, never hear of some of the wrong paths you've taken, or never hear of some of your failings, which, younger generations may be going through right now.
No, I think there have been plenty of opportunities where I've been a terrible boss.
Okay.
And I've had team members very frustrated. I've taken out the pressure on the team, and then I've learned
Okay.
that actually, at the end of the day, you're as good as your team. And what I've realized is that it's actually when things are going well, you stop learning a little bit. But we all go through cycles. When things are going well, our learning becomes a little bit less. Then we get one, knock on the face. We again start learning, and the journey again continues over and over again.
And all of us, Sonali, on a regular basis, even today, make mistakes.
I'm sure.
You're going to make mistakes all of the time. Hopefully, if you don't make the same mistake again, then you're getting better.
I mean, I'll talk of a mistake of mine. I mean,
Actually, I have a specific experience I want you to talk about. Why was Cadbury's your highest point of learning, and why was GE your lowest point?
yeah. No, I think Cadbury was the highest because the first 5-6 years I was genuinely outside my comfort zone. So I'd done a lot of sales and marketing, line roles, used to calling the shots, and then I joined the company as a strategy head. And one of the brutal shocks of being the strategy head is nobody listens to the strategy head. So you can do a lot of PowerPoint and information, but nobody listens to you. So I think it took me a couple of years of learning, and I think two things I learned in the process. Firstly, to say that you don't evaluate yourself as a strategy head on which decisions of yours got implemented.
Okay.
You evaluate yourself on how the company's decision making has improved, right? And I think that process took me some time to learn. But in the initial phase, it was tremendous frustration, arguments, discussion, and that was, I think, one piece. And then after strategy, I did HR. So really, there was a 5-6 year period where I was completely outside my comfort zone. And then after 5 years, I hit marketing, and it was like, fish taking to water, and it was just flying. But those 5 years in the middle was really developing me as a leader. I always knew marketing. I could have done 5 more years of marketing. Yeah, and I would have become a better marketer, but I would not have become a better leader. By the time I hit the marketing job in Cadbury, I was also a good marketer and a good leader. And I think that made the difference.
Fair point. And before I close, give me these, quick tips so that people can understand how do you build this, GBM model.
The first starting point to getting better is to assess yourself and say, are you a natural, fast, get better person, or are you actually very slow? What are you like in your getting better? How much better are you getting for every 1 hour report? And once you assess that, then you got to make that effort to change your model.
So in an extremely cramped life and routine, let me ask that Bharat, when is that quiet time where you assess and do a deep dive, unless you go for a Vipassana course or something, right? Where you actually do this inward journey and assess yourself, according to you?
I think you have to keep doing it pretty much all of the time. It's not, hey, Fridays 3 to 6 p.m. I'm going to sit in a dark room and, hopefully realization will come.
And I mean, not getting the time is, I think, the biggest cop-out. And the thing I find about most of us, the 3 most important things in our lives, which is our health, our family, and our getting better at work. These are the 3 things we can't find time for. So it's quite extraordinary what we find time for. But we can't find time for getting better at work, health, and family. I think as workers, as human beings, we got to desperately reflect and say, if I can't find time for the 3 most important things, what am I doing?
Sure.
I've had the privilege of seeing Mouli in these phases. I remember him, one of the reasons I put him in my team first was he had the maximum number of, I'd come to do the induction for management trainees, and I was the marketing head, and I was telling them about Mark. This fellow had more questions than any of my team fellows had. So I said, let me get him as part of my team, and you come and answer some of those questions now that you're... I must tell you that part has not changed. Even now, as the head of Pidilite, he asked me more questions about Pidilite strategy than I asked myself. So clearly he has got better over time. And I think this is all, all of us evolve our own style, so on and so forth. Everybody's got his own style of, so as to say, getting better. The important thing is, hey, when you get up in the morning, are you loving what you're doing? Because you can only get better at what, if you're doing it as a job, you're not going to get too much better at it. B, are the people who are now working for you, are they loving what they are doing?
Sure. On that note, thank you so much for these precious insights, and hopefully our viewers have gained a lot from your cumulative wisdom and will get better at bettering themselves. Thank you so much, Mouli. Until your next book. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sonali.